Welcome to the Success for Life podcast. Back at it again with my new guest today. We're going to talk something dear to my heart, something I think I know a little bit about, haven't been one for a very long time. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship and all the things associated with. So it should be a fun podcast. I'm going to talk with the guru and the expert, Pete Mohr, on this today, and we're going to really dive into a lot of things, everything entrepreneurship today, and he's going to talk about simplifying entrepreneurship. If that is at all possible, we will find that out today. I definitely have questions about how that's going to be simplified. Pete, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Coach.
It's great. It's great to have you on. Tell everybody a little bit about your background and how you got to this point. I've looked at a lot of your stuff on Instagram, and you do some great stuff there, and very creative and informative. So tell everybody your background.
Yeah, well, thanks so much. I mean, I've been in business all my life, essentially. I've worked for somebody else on a full-time basis for about 6 months of my entire life. So, started my first business and rolled along. I've owned businesses in service, and I currently own retail. I own shoe stores as well. I've helped people buy and sell businesses as a broker. So entrepreneurism has been a part of my life for a long time, and it's just what gives me energy. It doesn't take it away.
Cool. Wow. So you just said a mouthful in there. So, business background.
Yeah.
Did you go to school? Where how did that evolve into where you are today?
Sure. I got lots of schooling. I don't talk about it all that much, but I've got a couple of business degrees and a master's and that sort of stuff. And I'm a certified coach with Business Made Simple. And I mean, my philosophy is that I'm always learning. So, different stages of my life, I've been learning different things, and, all of those things combine to what I do today, which is, I still have the shoe stores and work in those a little bit. I don't work in them very much. My sort of philosophy around entrepreneurism is that you set your business up so that you don't always have to be there. And, there's ways and philosophies and sort of frameworks around doing that. So, I work in my shoe stores on average about a half day or a day a week. And the rest of the time I spend talking to other entrepreneurs about how to set their business up in a turnkey way so that they can enjoy doing the other things that they want to do. And, for some people that's taking a trip, or other people it's maybe looking at a different business or spending more time with family, or, there's all sorts of different things. They're uniquely yours. But the idea around it is that your business should be foundational to your life. It should provide the pillars to give you the life that you want to live, as opposed to you always being there to prop up your business. And, two different ways of looking at things.
Interesting. So you have your own business. Obviously, you do the coaching and helping entrepreneurs set up theirs. Essentially, so you're trying to get them to get out of the business of being in their business and into the business of being an owner, entrepreneur, and be able to put the pieces in place. What are those pieces that are necessary? Let's unpack that a little bit, because I think that's probably, even though we're getting right to the point earlier than expected, but that is the number one thing that entrepreneurs have a hard time in, right? So just a little background for people. When you become an entrepreneur and you start your own business, as you start to try to get to scale, the biggest difficulty is pulling yourself out, alleviating some control to other people. And when can you do that from a profitability standpoint? See, that's the thing. It's very easy to say, hey, I can go and hire this person to do that, but then it impacts your profitability. So that person has to have a positive impact on your profitability in order for each thing to be successful. And that's one of the things with entrepreneurship that everybody who jumps into it does not realize, right? I'm going to own my own business, and I'm going to be an instant millionaire, an instant billionaire. And there's a lot of pieces to it and stages to it, as I've learned myself over the past 20 years of being in business. Unpack that a little bit for us, Pete.
I've got this framework where I call it the 5 Ps of turning your frustration into freedom. And I'll just outline those 5 Ps because they're really vitally important to understanding and developing your business and communicating it. Because that's one of the key things as a leader. We need to communicate everything around our business. And that's where a lot of this stuff gets missed. So really the 5 Ps are these: understanding your promise, aligning your product, your process, and your people to it so that you can enjoy the right amount of profit. And when we can unpack those along the way. But really, one of the things I've been finding lately, Dave, is that, a lot of stuff has changed over the last few years. And when we talk about, most of the people I work with have been in it for a little while. They've been at it for sort of 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And, you're kind of looking back and you're saying, well, this is the way we've always done it. Well, things have changed and changed a lot. And, a lot of the times that you've set up your promise of your business, and the promise is this: understanding the problem of your client, finding out your unique set of situations and solutions that solve that problem so that they can build a better life. And, everybody buys a better life. So the idea around that promise is that, things may have changed. The way you used to do it 2-3 years ago isn't necessarily the way people want to be delivered that anymore. And so there's been a disconnect with some of these companies and their promises. They're saying, well, that's always been it, but it's got to morph a little bit. And then when you look at the morphing of that and the promise around your business, then you're saying, well, we've had these products forever. Well, do the products still align with the promise? And if the promises change, are you changing your products? Are you keeping all these legacy products? Are you looking for the new products that people actually want even more? Because if not, you get left in the dust. And that's a tough thing. It's happening to a lot of, I'll call them legacy businesses these days, where they haven't made the changes they need to make to their promise and to their product and to the process and people in order to get the right profit. And they're seeing their profits erode. So it's an interesting thing when you kind of look at some of those different alignments. And that's why I like the word alignment around this, because we're aligning that product. We're aligning the process, right? Understanding that all sorts of different processes happen in your business. And, for those people who are overwhelmed, overworked, and find they can't ever get out of their business, it's probably because most of the processes that they have in their business are actually in their own head. Not on paper. They don't have the playbook. Put it back into coach, terminology. They don't have the right playbook. The team doesn't know what to do. Are we turning left? Or are we turning right? Are we going to the goalpost? Are we going to the end of the end zone? Do I block here? Are we even running this time, or are we passing?
Very good point. So
process is missing in a lot of cases. And sometimes they're still using these old processes that don't even make sense anymore.
Well, how should an entrepreneur formulate their process? I think that's even a bigger issue, right? So you can put processes in place and then they don't end up working out the way you want them to.
Yeah.
How can they formulate their process so they really have a system that they can follow that will put them in the right position?
Yeah, I use these 3 words: assess the issue, address the issue, and assign accountability, right? So assess what it is you need to do, right? So if you keep getting asked the question all the time, okay, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? And you're saying as a leader, gosh, these guys should know what to do by now. Well, it's because the process isn't right. So how do you get that process out of your head, either onto paper, onto video, onto audio, onto any source that your team is going to be able to absorb, learn, and understand so that they can actually accomplish that task? So I love, for example, a little app called Loom. It's a video app. You can share your screen. You can have your little video. You can show everything so we Loom a lot of stuff, put it into process, transcribe it, which is so easy to do with something like Otter. And then you're building your playbook, you're building your procedural manual so that anybody can go back. You can flip it into a YouTube channel, a private YouTube channel for your team to go and view and just outline these different things. So it doesn't have to be crazy. It just has to be usable and findable and searchable, so that when somebody can, in our retail stores, let's say I was in my retail store last week, I was covering a shift, and there was something that came up that I hadn't done. I mean, I don't work the till very much. So I just went to my playbook, our manual, opened up the book, took a look. It was actually what we call, it's a tax status for, regardless, basically it's one of the things that happens on occasion, not regularly. So being able to find that quickly, being able to dig into it, being able to go through the step-by-step procedure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and finish it, and have it happen consistently every time for anybody that goes through that procedure is so important. So where do you start with this stuff? You start with the things that are most common, and you get down to those things like I had, where you see them once every 3 months. And it's like, man, I don't remember how to do this. I got to go back to the manual to take a look. But if the manual isn't there, then they're going to come and get you, and you're going to have to answer a question. And this is where you're always being bombarded as the leader with all these questions. And you're saying, why don't they just understand? Or I've told them this like 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, or maybe even yesterday. But you haven't assigned the accountability yet either, which is that last piece there. After you have the procedure set up, now who's accountable for it?
Yeah, well, accountability is a huge thing in business, and kind of like what I said before is when do you hire the people? When do you put those people in place as your business is growing, and what are ways to really simplify that whole entire process of being an entrepreneur? So the hardest thing is the juggling of hats, right? You
Yep.
put a process in place, employee works for you, that employee does well, employee goes out, you now have to retrain somebody else, right? What are some of the things that you could do? And what I'm getting at is, do you need to have virtual assistants? What's the value in that part? Is outside sales something that's important? Generating business is the number one issue for entrepreneurs consistently, right? Being able to consistently generate sales. Who does that fall onto? In my opinion, until you get to a certain point, that falls on the business owner themselves. That's the number
Yeah.
one thing that they should be doing. So those kind of things are things that people really, really need to understand and are curious about, but they think they could, we could do Facebook ads and that'll solve our problem. No, that's not correct. We could do TikTok ads and that will solve our problem. No, that's not correct. Someone's got to follow up on those leads. How does that all work?
Yeah. Well, that's the 4th P, the big one, people, right? And so I outline people into 3 different categories. And the first one is, who's your ideal client, right? And I'm sure you've chatted about that, and everybody kind of understands the formulation of who are we actually trying to attract, right? And at the same time, who are we trying to repel? Because that's just as important, right? We don't want to waste our time with people that aren't going to do business with us. Right. So then the second component of people is your ideal team. And the same sort of thing. Who's the best ever team? Who's the worst ever teammate that you've ever had? And we're trying to attract those best evers, and we're trying to repel those worst evers. Right. And then we look at all of the outside sources. Like you said, maybe it's a virtual assistant. In my case with shoe stores, maybe it's my suppliers, all the different brands, whoever's helping you deliver the first P, your promise, anybody who's helping you deliver the promise. And we're always trying to coach and build our team around that, our team of clients, our team that works with us, and our team of outsourced suppliers. And so how do we kind of do that sort of stuff? Well, I, hinted at it already. The quickest way is really just take a sheet of paper, draw a line right down the middle. Who's your worst ever? Who's your best ever of any of those three? List all of the different things that goes down there so that you're understanding the next time I need to find a virtual assistant, who's the best ever virtual assistant I had? And I'm going to set up my ad so that it's really attracting those kind of people and repelling any of the ones that aren't the right fit. So we're always trying to, just putting it back into sports analogy, we're always trying to build our bench, right? We want to build the bench in the best possible way, but the only way to do that is understand what it is we need. So we look at our accountability chart and we're saying, okay, I'm going to fill for this sales role, sales manager role. Well, if I've never had a sales manager and I've been in that position before, what is it that I've needed to do along the way to actually make this piece work? And then I'm going to outline that sort of stuff in order to build that position. And then I'm going to be attracting those kind of people that are looking for that sort of stuff, right? Or if it's, any of these different things, we always have to keep in mind what it is we want and what it is we don't want in order to build our bench so that it's going to be ever strong and even better.
I have a great question for you. Really, just that was awesome. You sell shoes. You have a company that sells shoes.
Yes, sir.
So you have multiple different brands, multiple different products. And is it dress shoes? Is it everything? Is it?
Yeah, we have a couple stores called Shootopia here in Canada, and it's comfort stores. It's we sell New Balance and Saucony and Keen and Birkenstock and all the stuff that you wear pretty much every day. Not the high fashion stuff, no 6-inch heels. It's more of the stuff that you just want to be wearing every day and be comfortable in.
Perfect. So when you choose your suppliers, right? So you have Saucony, you have New Balance, whatever casual shoe you have, and you choose those suppliers and you choose those brands. That's a decision that's going to have a gigantic impact on your bottom line, right? Because you're associating your store with the quality of those shoes and the marketability of those shoes, right? So when you choose the specific shoes to stock on your shelves, how do you go about that? Because that's like an infinite process, right? You might like certain shoes yourself, right? But someone else may not. A female may like different types of shoes. Children may like different. So how do you go through that process? Because to me, it's like a perfect kind of thing from an entrepreneurship as there's so many choices. But your success hinges on your ability to serve those choices and to be able to market them when they get in there. But they still have to have a certain level of sustainability themselves, right? So how do you go through that process?
Like every entrepreneur, I get sucked into buying the shoes sometimes that I like that we never sell. I'm not gonna lie. It happens. Right. It happens. Like, ooh, I like that one, and I buy a run of 20 and we sell 3 and put the rest on sale. But so do we make mistakes? Yeah, we make mistakes. But one of the things I work with clients with Simplifying Entrepreneurship on is actually building this kind of thing for their business. I call them the guiding principles, right? And the guiding principles all is developing your 5 Ps, understanding that. So what's our promise at Shootopia to our clients? It's on the wall. What do we want them to do? And what are we helping them through? We want them to look good and feel fantastic. And how do we deliver that? And how else does it look? Well, I can take that down into 9 letters, and they are ooh, ah, and aha. So in other words, when I look in the mirror and I'm looking at my new shoes and I'm looking in the mirror and I'm going, ooh, man, I look pretty good. So delivery number 1. And if you close your eyes and you go, oh, man, those feel awesome. I've delivered number 2. And number 3 is, aha, I finally found a pair of shoes that actually looks good and feels fantastic. I thought that was impossible because usually the ones that look good feel crappy and the ones that feel crappy don't look good, all this stuff. So if we can deliver that in the shoes that we sell, then they're going to pay happily at the cash. They're going to walk out the door and they're going to look back up at the Shootopia logo and they're going to go, you know what? Shoetopia is my favorite shoe store. I'm going to come back here next time I need a pair of shoes. So that's how we align our products. When we look for our brands, we want to make sure that not only the brands, but the individual SKUs within the brands deliver that feeling, deliver that look, deliver that result. And when they do, with the added value of whatever the cost of that product is, if we can deliver the cost with the product and the feeling of ooh, ah, and aha, then we've actually made our business. That's what our brand is at Shootopia. So that's how we navigate through any of these things. It's like, this one isn't going to deliver the ooh, or you know what, this one isn't going to deliver the ah as well as we usually like it for the value or for, you know, how we piece all of that together. So usually it's a fairly easy decision because we're absolutely clear on what we're trying to deliver to our clients and the promise that we're trying to deliver to them.
That's gold right there. That's great stuff because that really helps you understand how you choose the brands that align with Shootopia, and then obviously the customers that come into Shootopia, so they walk away with that exact feeling. That's really, really awesome stuff. Now I'm gonna give you a hard one, okay? How do you translate that on an online experience? Because that can be very difficult. And so I walk into a shoe store and you know, when I go and go and get my running shoes or walking shoes, right? I go to I can't believe it slips my mind, but the place that I go to, they do a great job of making sure everything's fit and they all that kind of stuff. Roadrunner Sports, that's the name of it.
Yeah, cool.
Roadrunner Sports, right? There's one in the United States everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But they do a really good job. Like you would say, how could a shoe store that really just kind of originally caters to people who run be good for everybody? But what it is they are taking the time to really size you up, make sure everything fits right, all those kind of things. So whether you're an avid runner, casual runner, walker, whatever, they take care of you and they do a great job of that. Now you go to online, right? Well, when I go online, I don't go to Roadrunner stores sports to buy any of my shoes, right? When I go online, I may go to the brand, the actual brand in some cases, but the truth is a lot of times the online brands have not done an amazing job with the experience online. But I love sites like eSpay and there's some other sites as well that I go to. But that's one example of where they show so much variety, right? If I want a knockoff shoe, I could go right to Amazon, you know, and get some very, very inexpensive shoe for that experience. So that translates. How do you translate, or maybe not even translate? How do you develop an online experience that can give people somewhat of what you're talking about when they walk out of your store?
You know, it's tough. It's tough. And we have an online store, shootopia.ca. And from that perspective, all of our stuff is there and you can search by brands and you can search by men's department and all that sort of stuff. So the search capabilities are all there. So search is important. But am I going to compete with the breadth of like, if I'm, you know, the New Balance that we stock in our store, for example, am I going to compete with New Balance's breadth of what's on their particular website? No, we don't. Like, New Balance has their own stores. It's just a portion of our store. So we don't have nearly the selection that they have. But, you know, I can say that the stuff that we do have, when it comes to online, we sell online and ship all over, and that's fine. But, you know, a lot of our clients use our online store before they come and try on, because shoes are still, you mentioned it, are a fitting experience. People want to be fit. People want to come in and try it on. They want to go and look in the mirror after they have it on, go ooh and ah and aha. And they don't necessarily want to bring it in, try it on, send it back, bring it in, try it on, send it back, do all this stuff. They just, when they want their shoes, they just want their shoes. So I'm going to go to the shoe store. I'm going to try them on. I have my selection of 10 shoes or 3 shoes or whatever the case is, and I'm going to probably come out with a pair. And so from that perspective, a lot of the work that we do on our web store is really to send people back to our individual stores. And what happens with our web store when we do sell out of province, and we don't ship to the States, but when we're selling across Canada, basically those people have never been to our store. Well, why did they pick us? Because typically their store didn't have the sizing or something like that, a color maybe that they wanted, and they just fished it, and we came up online in a search sort of thing, and then we send it. So how do we deliver that? Well, we deliver the ooh, ah, and the aha. Well, when we send a pair of shoes, we always send a thank you note in it, a handwritten thank you note to say, hey, you know what, I really appreciate you stopping in. And, just little things like that. We'll put in a shoehorn. We'll put in a Shootopia pad of paper so that they have something there as just a little add-on. And just to say, you know what, we appreciate your business. And if you're thinking of doing another purchase down the road, then hopefully you'll look at Shootopia. And you said it too, I don't usually go back to the store that I always go to. Well, that's sort of a brand loyalty thing. And from that perspective, brand loyalty is dissipating because of the prevalence of online shopping, and that's fine. But for those that are brand loyal, they are going to come to our web store. They are going to look through, and specifically if they're sort of in our area. So if they're in our area, they usually will go there first. They'll come in, they'll check out Shootopia's, Instagram or Facebook page or whatever, and then they come in that way. So I don't really care whether they come to our store or whether they come to our online store. The big thing for me is that we're delivering to the best of our ability the ooh, ah, and the aha, so that like that aha of getting a handwritten thank you note in your parcel, and some of these other things. We'll get people saying, I've never got a thank you note in anything. I mean, it's $100 pair of shoes. You took the time to actually write me a thank you note. So what else can you do to deliver an experience, whether it's online or in store, that sets you apart in some little way so that people have the memory of that brand experience and take it through? And that's the level and lever to your profitability, which
Awesome.
is the fifth P, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now you're coaching clients.
Yeah.
I want to transition to talk about how those people work with you. How do they come to you, and what are some of the problems that you're solving? You touched on some of them, but we'll
Yeah.
definitely want to touch on more of that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And most of my clients, I don't work with a ton of startups. It's more they've been at it for a while. And here's how they usually feel. I'm overworked. I'm overwhelmed. I'm doing too much myself. I don't know how to, the last 3 years or whatever the case is, I've had to do all this stuff like we chatted about before because maybe the money wasn't there or whatever. Maybe now I have a little bit more money, but I don't seem to have my life. I want my relationships back. I want my time back. So some of those kind of things are what we work on. We work around the 5 Ps in aligning all of that stuff, making sure that everything's aligning properly through your process, through your people. A lot of people that I've worked with don't really even have a formal accountability chart. They don't really have like formal, their team kind of knows what to do, but they don't know whether they're really in charge of those areas. It's one thing to have an organizational chart with people's names on it. It's another thing if they don't actually have the accountability. So we work through some of that stuff. We work through meeting rhythms. We work through marketing side of things. We work through the guiding principles, sometimes building models to explain your business, like how I explained what one of my models is called the heart of Shootopia. Well, the heart of Shootopia is delivering that experience, the ooh, ah, and the aha. So what does that involve? There's sort of 3 segments around that and all the delivery of how we deliver that down to the client. So we work with some of those kind of things and frameworks around what it is to, start working on your business and not in it, because, the idea is that you own your business and it shouldn't own you.
That's fantastic. That's great. Now, when people come to you and they feel like, hey, I'm just overwhelmed, I'm overworked, you know, this entrepreneur thing is as and I've been at it for a while. It's taking up all my time.
Yeah.
How do I steal some of that time back? What's the first thing you tell them?
Well, usually we assess, address, and advance, right? Like those are those three words. So we got to dig in and assess where your time's being used first, and it's kind of like, okay, let's actually do a list of how you're spending every day this week so that we understand the frameworks of where you're actually using your time. And is it the most advantageous? You mentioned it before about maybe we should be hiring, a virtual assistant to take some of this stuff. I have a whole process called love it or leave it. And that's one of the things we do right off the bat too. Do you actually love the stuff you're working at in your business? Or is it time to leave some of it and really work in your love it zone? And from that perspective, we start digging into what is your love it zone so that you can be working in the most effective way. I mean, Dave, we're here having this conversation. I love having conversations about entrepreneurism. It's something I love to do. Do I love to actually, sit down and do my book work and stuff like that? No, I don't. That's why I have a bookkeeper, right? So I'm good at it. I told you before, I've got lots of business degrees. I was a couple months away from being an accountant. So I'm actually very good at it, but it doesn't mean I actually want to do it. I'm going to spend my time doing it. So understanding some of those things around your business and where you're spending your time and whether you're spending your time that in areas that drain you or whether you're spending your time in areas that give you all the energy and you're excited about. And at the end of the day, it feels as though you really haven't worked. That's where I want to live. I want to live that if I'm working, at least I'm working in areas that give me strength and power and excitement, as opposed to, oh my God, I've got to do this again. I got to spend another day doing this. Like I've been putting this off and procrastinating, which is a dirty word in entrepreneurism, right? So I've been procrastinating this for how long? Because I actually don't want to do it, or I don't know how to do it. So great book out there called Who Not How by Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. And it talks about this idea that you don't always need to know how to do everything. You just need to know who can do it for you. So, there's lots of different things and frameworks around that we work with to free up your time. I mean, something as simple as sometimes it's automations and tools that we dig into. Something as simple as filtering your email can save you literally up to 5 hours a week, depending if you're drowning in email all the time. My inbox is usually sitting at, in the vicinity of around 10 in emails. That's it. Everything else is filtered out and done and sent off to the right people. I mean, people send me emails all the time that shouldn't even come to me. I'm not the bookkeeper. So if anything has an invoice on it, it gets filtered automatically and goes to my bookkeeper. I don't even see it. So just different things like that. We work through some of the little areas that can save you immediate time. And then we look deeper down into the future as to how do you want this thing to look? Like how many days a week do you want to work in the business? So how many hours a day do you want to work in the business? And we sort of start rolling it backwards. And you know what? It takes time. It doesn't happen in a week. It doesn't happen even in a quarter in most cases. It happens through time. But if you don't have an idea of what you want out of it, then you're never going to get there because the plan isn't there, right? We have no game book.
That's fantastic. In dealing with competition, this is my last question on this, because I think competition, so sometimes people have a run of success and then, I don't know, a shoe store opens across the street, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my goodness, they don't even have to be good, but they're going to steal some clients just because someone's curious, right?
Yep.
So how do you teach entrepreneurs to deal with competition? That's where a lot also they struggle, right? They do well and then competition copies their idea, whatever it is, right? And then now they're competing. How do you teach entrepreneurs to be able to compete in an efficient, effective way?
Well, first of all, I believe that the world is abundant. And I believe that competition is a good thing. And I believe that we need competition to advance the world. It doesn't matter if it's in shoes or if it's in coaching or anything. It doesn't matter. So my philosophy around this is that if you're scared about competition, it's probably because you don't understand your client well enough. that one of those 3 P's, or 5 P's, that people portion, one of the 3 is that your client. So you're not really understanding, are you still aligning with the promise? This is that idea of aligning your product, your process to the promise. And if you're dealing with your old promise and you haven't upgraded it, if you haven't looked at what people are actually wanting now as opposed to what they were wanting 3 years ago, then these kind of things are the things that allow you to always be on top of your competition as opposed to behind them. Because people, when they start something new, they're kind of they're in and they've got this, and people that have been at it for a while tend to just kind of rest on their laurels a little bit. And from that perspective, you just can't. That's your job as a leader, to be on the forefront of those kind of things, so that you just don't really have to worry about competition, because you're doing your thing the way that you're delivering your promise, the way you deliver it, the way your clients want it done. And yeah, are you going to lose a shoe sale here? Yeah, but you're probably going to be bringing in different things that are not, that they don't have, that you're going to gain. And that's this part of sort of that 80-20 rule, where you're shedding 10% of the stuff. You're really honing in on that middle, what I call the core items of your business, on that 80%. And you're always looking for the next new 10% to come in. It's when you stop looking for that next new 10%, that's when you get worried about competition.
Very, very interesting. You have to figure out. I think the resting on your laurels is a very, very big thing that happens to entrepreneurs. They get a certain amount of success. They think it's going to stay that way, and they're not looking around the corner as to what new trends are. And you talked about it earlier as well. What are some of the things that are going? Business is constantly evolving.
It is.
And as much as you'd like it to stay a certain way that you're comfortable with, that's not going to be the case ever, really. Even for companies like Amazon, constantly evolves, right? The pandemic, they hit it out of the park. Now we're out of the pandemic, and they're not hitting it out of the park as much as they were, right? Yep. So they have to continue to evolve what they're doing. Even the biggest of the biggest have to do that, right? So that's really, really great stuff. How can people get in touch with you, talk to you, meet with you, find out more about, your coaching service? How can they reach out to you?
Best way is simplifyingentrepreneurship.com. That's my website. You can search Pete Mohr on LinkedIn, or as you mentioned earlier in the show, on Instagram, Pete Mohr _coach. And, I'm basically all over social. So you can certainly find me there. Happy to have a chat. I've got a great assessment on my website right now, which it's all over the website, pretty easy to find at simplifyingentrepreneurship.com. But when you click that button, it takes about 10 minutes. And I just had one come in this morning. It's such an interesting assessment, because after 10 minutes, you get back between 50 and 60 page document that sort of outlines what you're doing super well in your business and the things that you need to work on. And I like sort of green lighting and red lighting things. So it gives you the green lights, pats you on the back, and it also gives you the red lights. And whether you use a coach or whether you use other tools, or just even acknowledging the fact that I need to work on these things, is something that's going to help you through to be a better business person and have an even better business.
Pete, this was awesome. It was great having you on. I learned a ton of stuff as well. I think you've really, really honed in on some of the things that entrepreneurs need to understand. The 5 Ps is definitely something that I'm going to write down for myself. Thanks so much for being on the Success for Life podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay. Have a great day.